Thank you all for coming tonight, once again. And tonight, it's called, as you can see on the screen, it's called 360 Degrees, an in-depth analysis of an hapachu. And again, these shiurim are based on the shiurim of Rabbi Bravda Zatzal, whose shloshim is probably right around this week. So, I'll tell you how the shiur started. The shiur basically started, when this works, that if you ask somebody what this yontif mainly is about, you'd say v'nahapechu. It's something that gets everybody excited. Everybody starts going crazy when they hear the words v'nahapechu. And I started to think to myself, if I went around and asked people, what is the v'nahapechu? They would generally tell me, Haman plotted against the Jews, and the plan was overturned. That's the v'nahapechu. It was all turned around on Haman's head. But I started to think to myself, so what? There are plenty of other Yom Tovim where the same thing happened. Like, what's the big deal already? By Hanukkah, Antiochus wanted to kill us, wanted to take away our Judaism, wanted us to become Greeks, and we won. On Pesach, Parai wanted to drown us, and what happened? He drowned in the sea. So So what's the big deal when it comes to Purim? Why is there such an inyan, such a theme of v'nahapechu? Things were turned around. So I started to think into it, and I said to myself that I think in Purim there's something different that we don't have by other Yom Tovim. And that is, there are two parts of the v'nahapechu. One's called the general v'nahapechu. The story on a whole was turned around. And then there's also called detailed v'nahapechu. Every single product, every single detail of the story, and we're going to see a lot of them tonight, hopefully, Mitzvah Hashem, how a lot of the details even come full 360. They come right back and fell on the person who tried to do something. So let's start a little bit with general v'nahapechu. Not general v'nahapechu, general, you get it. Anyways, Haman, who's an Amaleki, he plotted to annihilate the Jewish nation. What happened? His plan backfired, and the Jewish nation killed Haman and many Amalekim. If you look at the Midrashim, a lot of the people, or most of the people that the Jews killed in their fighting, were from the nation of Amalek. Now, the second thing you can tell me is, on a whole, the story as a whole was flipped around. The Medrash tells us of how despicable the Jews were to the other nations. The Medrash says that a guy would walk into the store and he'd say, Jew, how much does this cost? And he'd say $10. And the guy would go ahead and he would flip a nickel, a dime on the table. And he'd say, 10 cents? I told you $10. And he said, Jew, in another couple of months, I'm going to kill you, your family, everybody. I'm going to own this store. You're lucky if I give you a quarter. You're lucky if I give you a nickel. Lucky if I give you anything. Here, take this. We were so at a low point in history. Yet at the end of the Megillah, and we'll talk about how this happened, the end of the Megillah we're told, V'ravim me'amei haaretz misyahadim. A lot of the people were misyahadim. What does that mean? It doesn't mean they actually became Jews, but it means they acted like Jews. It became in vogue to dress like a Jew, to act like a Jew, because the Jews are on such a high level of power, people wanted to act like the Jews. It was something which was sort of in style. So that's a total v'nahapechu. But now let's get started in talking about the details. Now, if you remember from last week, when we started talking about Parak Aleph, we talked about how Achashverosh wanted to do Kirtzayin Ish V'ish, like the will of every single person, which means even the slightest whim of the lowest person had to be done. That's what he wanted, so he could have, for his own personal benefit, everybody would think that he's the greatest king. What happened because of that rule? He had no choice but to fetch Vashti, which eventually led to her death. You want to do Kirtzayin Ish V'ish? That was the will of the people, and look what resulted, that Vashti was killed. Next, we had at the end that Memuchan changed the law, which now allowed a king to judge personal offenses. Why did he do that? For his own personal gain. Because he wanted Zeresh to talk Amaleki. What happened because of that Memuchan law? Turns out that Haman couldn't get a lawyer when the king thought he was plotting against him. Remember we said in Parak Zayin, when Achashverosh said, oh, you want to kill me, hang him. If the law wasn't changed, Haman could have gotten a lawyer which says, hey, it's a personal offense, we've got to send it to the court. But because Memuchan himself changed the law 9 years earlier, that enabled Achashverosh to go ahead and kill him right away. Last thing we saw in Parak Aleph was Achashverosh thought he was going to look great by sending out those first letters that said that a man is in charge of his house and that he runs everything. But remember we pointed out, turns out people didn't think he was too bright of a king. They said every tailor knows that he's in charge of his house. Why is a king sending out a proclamation like that? What kind of a loon is he? So, things that we see sort of in the first parak, it's a detail. They tried to do something for their own personal benefit, and it got thrown right back at them. However, the Yosef Lekach says that there is one part of the Megillah that is not necessary for the actual saving of Klal Yisrael. The only reason it is there is to let us know Atzas Hashem Yisakum, how Kadosh Baruch Hu takes a Russia's plan and completely turns it against him. So we're going to analyze this parak, and that's parak Vav, the story of Haman and Mordechai when all the events take place there. So just to bring you up to speed what's going on, till parak Hey, Haman of Russia rises to power. He puts forth a decree which would wipe out the Jewish nation, Rahman al-Islam. Mordechai finds out about it and informs Esther Amalka. Esther decrees that all the Yidden in Shushan should fast for 3 days, and she'll go speak to Achashverosh on their behalf. She goes in, and she invites Achashverosh and Haman to a private mishta, a private party, when she will finally reveal all of her secrets to the king. Okay, so let's take a look. It says in Parakeh Pasuk Tes, Vayetze Haman bayom hahu. After he got that invitation, he went out on that day, Sameach v'tzayv lev. He went out, he was very, very happy. Now, just as a side point, why does it say bayom hahu on that day he went out happy? Because that was the last day he was ever happy. Because you know where he was the next day? Swinging back and forth on the gallows. So it says bayom hahu on that day because that was the last day he was ever happy. Now, B'chiras, Haman is Mordechai b'shara melech. When Haman saw Mordechai sitting in the gate, didn't budge. Haman was breathing on top of him, Mordechai didn't move. Haman got extremely enraged at Mordechai. So what does he do? He goes to his house. He calls on all of his, Chacham and Zeresh. So that's a simple question. Haman, you're so upset, you're so angry, go tell Achashverosh. Go tell him Mordechai disobeying your order, he deserves death. What are you going home and complaining to your wife and kids? What are you doing that? And to all your Chacham? It doesn't make sense. So Chazal bring down 3 reasons why Haman didn't go to Achashverosh. Number 1, Mordechai was Jewish and was not included in the Gezerah, the decree of Kol Abdei HaMelech Asher B'Shar HaMelech. Since Mordechai was not an Eved of the king, he was an Eved of Hashem, it could be that he was not included in that Gezerah to bow down to Haman. You're right, the Jews who were in the Shar HaMelech did bow down. Could be they did it out of fear. Mordechai wasn't included, so he didn't really have a complaint to the king. The second reason he didn't go is because maybe Mordechai was close with Esther. Don't want to start up with, we know she was brought from Mordechai's house, so if he'd go complain to Achashverosh, maybe Esther would defend him, so he didn't want to go to Achashverosh. The third one, and probably the most important one, is that they're going to make so much fun of me if I go and complain about one Jew. I mean, just imagine, he's got everybody bowing down to him, he's the number 2 guy in all the known world at that point, and one Jew doesn't give him cover. So what's he going to do, complain to Achashverosh? Everybody's going to start making fun of him. Like, come on, what's your problem? It's just one Jew, get over it. Well, come on. So that's why he didn't go. So what does he do? He goes to Zeresh and he tells out his problems. Now we're going to see 3 problems that Haman had. These are 3 problems. Problem number 1 is, I can't stand it. I get so depressed every single time I see that Mordechai. The Gemara says he knew how much money he had. He knew everything. He said, I cannot stand it. Every single time, is Mordechai Yehudi. I can't stand it. Every time I see him, I get depressed. So Zeresh said, I hear it. It's a problem. So I got the perfect solution. Here's the solution. Number 1, have a gallows constructed in your backyard so you'll always see Mordechai swinging in the wind. And make sure that it's 50 Amasai, 100 feet tall. Why? Because if you're so depressed every time you see Mordechai, now I'm going to make it that every time you'll see him, you'll be B'simcha. We'll take away the depression and give it Simcha. It's so high, you're in the palace window. I know where you work. I know when you look from that room, you can look out the window right there, you'll see him swinging in the wind. You'll be so happy every time you see him. Okay? Haman's the next problem. I can't tell the king, we said before, other officers are going to make fun of me if I complain to the king. So she said, Haman, I got just the thing for you. You know what you got to do, Haman? You make sure that you're the first person there to speak to the king. You normally go in at 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 in the afternoon when the king wakes up. No, not today. Tomorrow morning, you're going to go there 2 a.m. before he's even up. And you are going to be the only one there who goes into him. You're not going to let anybody else in. And Haman, this is very, very, very important. You just tell the king that Mordechai has disobeyed his law and deserves death. Do not say anything else. Nothing. I don't get what. You just tell him Mordechai deserves to be killed, and that's it. Don't say anything else. Very important. Haman's last problem is, you know what? How can I go to this private party? I'm so upset. I'm in such a bad mood. Not every time I see Mordechai. It's just dumb. I'm in a very bad state of mind. I can't go drink with the king and queen. So you know what she says to him? I got just the solution. If you listen to my advice, you'll go b'simcha u'tuvleva. You'll be so happy when you go to this feast. Mordechai will be swinging up there. You'll be in such a good mood. Now, He listens to her. What's his reaction? Vayitav hadavar be'enei Haman vaya'as ha'etz, and he made the eitz. You know, because the guy says over here, the Gemara says, what did she suggest to him? She said, Yasu eitz kavaya chamishim amma. Let somebody else make the eitz. She don't tell the prime minister, the number 2 guy in the whole world, you go construct a 100-foot tall pole. Get other people to do it. Who's doing it? Avadim. Versus no, vayas ha'etz. This Haman rolled up his sleeves right then. He was so happy. The sin he had for Mordechai, he was so happy he went himself and constructed the eitz. Kavaya chamishim amma. Can you imagine that? What it must have taken that night to build a 100-foot pole? I mean, no matter where he got the wood from, it doesn't make a difference. To build such a pole takes a lot of time. He did it himself. I want you to know something. The Yosef Lekach says, if you take a proper look at their plans, every single detail is based to find the cure for exactly what he told them. They didn't add on anything, didn't leave out anything. They were medactic, they were specific, and exactly that's your problem, this is your eitzah. Which means this plan was absolutely perfect. They told him the exact cure to each of his problems. Okay, well, if it was so perfect, we all have to ask ourselves, so no, what went wrong? Why didn't her solutions work? These are perfect. The Yisrael is telling us this is a perfect antidote for whatever was bothering Haman. So let's go and see what happened. Parak Vav, after Achashverosh can't sleep, the pasuk says that he says, who's in the chutzner? So the Na'arim told him Haman's there. So the most famous Haman in the whole Megillah, Vayavai Haman, Haman came. And the king said to him, what should be done to a man that the king desires in his honor? Now, at this point over here, what should Haman have said at this point? What should he have said? Exactly what Zerah told him to say. Adoni Hamelech, whatever it is, I don't know, I don't care, but I have something greatly important, a great matter to speak with you. I have information, insider information that Mordechai wants to kill you. And he's disobeying your law. Whatever he's going to lie and say about Mordechai, get him killed. That's exactly what he should have said. What actually happened? So, Haman says in his heart, who could the king possibly want to honor more than me? Like, come on. So, Rabbi says Haman had a problem over here. He said he had a suffix. He had a paskin a shiloh. What comes first? Sinas Mordechai, my hatred for Mordechai, or kavod atzmi, my own kavod? Which one is greater? Which one weighs more? What should I do? And Rahman al-Islam, unfortunately, he didn't have Zeresh and all his chachamim with him. He was a dying mumcha. He had a paskin the shiloh himself. So what did he paskin? Comes first is my kavod. That's what he paskin. So what happens? Vayomer Haman el Melech, Ish asher Melech chavetz bikarai. Now, Haman, what are you repeating the question for? Just get to the answer. He's repeating. So brother says, no, you got to understand. He's got to think long and hard about this. This is what he's been waiting for. He's got to, Ish asher Melech. The drool's coming off out of his mouth. He's a bunch of, Yaviu levush malchus. Let him bring the royal clothes that Shalosh by Melech, which the king wore. Visus and the horse that Sharachav of Melech, which the king rode on. And put the crown on his head. So Haman, get a grip on yourself. Like, stop it. Like, do what Zeresh told you. Stop this foolishness. What are you doing? But no, he doesn't stop there. He keeps going. Men give it blood. One of the officers dress up this guy, and they'll bring him in the streets, and they'll say, they'll start announcing it through the streets. So should be done to the person that the king wishes to honor. So this to Haman is Gan Eden. Haman is sitting there, he sees the sky shining, there are rainbows, birds chirping, angels are singing. This to Haman is everything he has ever desired in his entire life, and he cannot wait to receive this Gan Eden. So what happens? Quickly! To take the clothes and the horse like you spoke. What is Haman thinking still? Okay, I'm ready. Here it's coming. It's coming. I'm ready. But what happens when Achashverosh says the next few words? We all know the Gan Eden goes away. And what does he say? Mordechai ha-Yehudi ha-Yoshev b'Sha'ar Melech. Do it to Mordechai the Jew who sits in the Sha'ar Melech. Al tapel davar mikol asher dibarta. Don't leave out anything, Haman. And with those words, that not only did Achashverosh take away Haman's Gan Eden, but what he actually did was turn it into a fiery Gehenna for him right now. This is the worst thing in Haman's life right now. And the Midrashim point out that Haman said like this, Mordechai, which Mordechai are you talking about? So Achashverosh said, Mordechai ha-Yehudi, the Jew. And he said, well, there are lots of Mordechai Yehudis, lots of them to open up the Jewish phone book. So he said, Haman, come on, stop it. He's one of Yoshe B'Shar HaMelech. He's the one who sits at the gates of the king. You know what I'm talking about. So Haman said, you know what, Achashverosh is not proper. Mordechai doesn't need all this. Give Mordechai a town or a city, and he'll be happy with the taxes he collected. He collects from it. So Achashverosh said, great idea. I'm going to give him a city, and you're going to lead him in the streets. So Haman says, well, it's not fair. You know, I'm the guy who mints all the coins, and it's not proper for somebody like me to go and lead Mordechai. So he said, okay, I have an idea. Mordechai will start minting the coins, and you will take him on the horse. So he said, okay, listen, you know what? I have lots and lots of kids. According to the Gemara, one Mandar says he had 300 kids. Let them run in front of Mordechai. Let them take Mordechai and scream out, but don't let me do this. It's such an embarrassing thing for me. So Achashverosh said, Haman, you get full of good ideas today. You know what? They'll run in front. He'll take over your job. He'll get a city, and you will take him in the streets. So the last thing Haman HaRasha says is, please don't make me do this. I have a document from Eliphaz, the son of Esav, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, which says that I have to hate this person. I have to hate his nation. You are asking me to go against my family. I can't do it. I cannot do it. To the point, he said, I'm willing. Now listen to this. Haman's saying, I'm willing to be mevatel the gezerah of lahashv lahar galabe. I will rip up the decree against the Jews. Just don't make me do this. And Achashverosh says, sorry, I'll tell Pel Dover. No, hurry up, get out. Hurry up, get out of there. So now, let's analyze this for a little bit. What was Haman's problem? I can't tell the king because the other officers will make fun of me. So what does Zara say? Make sure you're the first person. Now what happened because of that? We have our first V'nahapechu. What happened because she told him to go early in the morning? Because he went so early in the morning, he was the only one there. There was no one else there to do these honors for Mordechai. He was the only one. That's the V'nahapechu. Her suggestion was, go there, flipped right back on Haman that he had to do these things for Mordechai. Go to the next one. He said, how can I go to this private party? I'm so upset. What'd she say back to him? He followed my advice to be the happiest guy on 2 feet. What actually happened with this V'nahapechu? We know that, when it comes on I'll tell you, but I'll tell you before, it says, that means he went back to his house, he was Avel in Avelus, V'chafui Roish, his head was covered. Why was he in Avelus? Because we all know the story that when he went leading Mordechai around his house, his daughter saw somebody who was very upset, leading somebody on the horse who looked very radiant. And she thought, must be my father. Ah, Zeresh, what a mama. She knows, she got it. She got that Mordechai, and now the king's making Mordechai parade Tati all through the streets. So what she do? She took the garbage pail and she took it and threw it on the person leading the horse, thinking it was Mordechai. Turns out who was it? It was Haman. And Haman looks up and she looks down, and she was mevatel. She was over. The one mitzvah that Esav has is kibbut av. The one mitzvah that Esav, the Amalek, has is kibbut av. So what does she do? She jumps off the roof and sitting there in a pool of blood. She's dead. So Haman goes home. He's avelus, because his daughter is dead in front of him. And chafui roish, she's covered. He's still, wiping the gook off of his eyes. This is exactly what she said. You'll be happy? Really? Doesn't seem too happy to me. Now, what was the biggest problem? He said, I can't stand it. I get so depressed every time I see Mordechai. So what did she say? Build a 50 amas gallows, 100 feet. So you'll see him, every time you'll see him, you'll be happy. So, what's the hapacha with this one? Well, this one is a great one. That the next psukim at the end in Parak Zayin say that Vayemer Charvana Echad Min HaSarisim L'fnei HaMelech Gam Hine Ha'etz. There is that tree Asher Asam on the Mordechai Asher Diber Tov Al HaMelech. And where is it? It's Oimid Beis Haman. It's right there in his courtyard. Gavaya Chamishim Amma. It's 50 Amma sides. Take a look out the window. Remember, he says, Adoni HaMelech, did you take a look at the window on the Shushan skyline recently? Did you notice anything that doesn't belong there? That's new? Gavaya Chamishim Amma sticking up there, Shir Chazanish, right out the backyard of Haman's backyard? He says, hey, I never saw that thing before. What in the world is that? So, well, look, that is the eighth. Because Zara said, build it 100 feet tall. So you'll be able to see it from the palace window. Charvain was able to say, look, it's right there. That's where it is. Look, it's right there. That's what Haman made for Mordechai because he wants to kill you. And because of that, Achashverosh turned around and started said, pay him on it. Says the Yosef Lekach. Before, remember, we saw the Yosef Lekach said that this plan was foolproof. He says, Lule Hashem. If not for Hashem, Adam, if not for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who got up when somebody stood up against us to annul their plans. If not for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this plan was foolproof. So that's part one of the details of V'nahapachu. But there's more. There's one part of the Megillah I think that some people get a little bit confused. And that is, what exactly did Haman, and who exactly did Haman write letters to? Now, it's very important to know and figure it out, because you're going to see a stunning revelation at the end of the Megillah. It says in Parak Gimel, Haman wrote to the nobles of the king and all the rulers, the leaders, who were leading every country, and all the officers of each nation. What did he write? From young till old, children and women, on one day, on the 13th of Adar, and to take all their spoils. Alright. Now, there's something else that Haman wrote. Pashegan Aksav means there was a second letter, says the guy, that Haman wrote. And this second letter was revealed to all the nations. The first letter that he wrote only went to the officers and all the rulers. This second letter only was posted all up in the streets, and everybody saw it. And what did it say? These words. Liyos asidim layom hazeh. Be prepared for the 13th of Adar. That's all it said. Haman only told the populace, be prepared. For what, who, when, where. The 13th of Adar, you be prepared. Now, the Jews, when everybody's being told, be prepared, not such a good thing for us, right? So that's all he wrote. So there were two letters that went out. One to all the important people, that they knew what to do. On the 13th, they would tell everybody, go ahead and destroy the Jews. And this one, which everybody was told, be prepared. Now, why did Haman do this? So the guy explains, because he was worried, if you put posters all up that everybody could see saying, kill the Jews on one day, he was afraid the Yidden would go to their mayors and council members and everything else and complain to them, this is unfair, and bribe them or whatever it would be, and would be safe. So Haman didn't want anybody to know, except for the important people. He had the Midrashim say, Amalekim, going through the streets and riling up the people. But what's said in the streets, be prepared. Now this is very important to know, and the V'nahapachu is amazing. Now on top is what Haman wrote. And what I'm going to V'nahapachu for you right now is on the bottom is show you what Mordechai wrote. And you'll see, because of Haman's nervousness that he didn't want the Jews to complain, is going to be the exact reason why things are going to get flipped on his head. Again, to the same thing that Haman did up here, wrote to all the important people. That what? Asher Nasan HaMelech, that the king gave royal permission to who? LaYehudim, to the Yehudim. Asher B'chol Ir B'Ir, on every city. LaYikahel, to gather. V'lamad al Nafsham, and to defend themselves. Lahashmid, and I'm going to point up here. Lahashmid, Laharag L'Abed, same thing down here. As who? Who could the Yidden? By royal decree, who are the Yidden allowed to fight? And this is unbelievable. Kol Chel, any army. Am, any nation. Umedina, any country, Hatzarim Oisam, who is going to disturb them or cause them pain. Tak Benashim Ushlalam Labes, exact same thing that Haman wrote up here. Now let me ask you something. Who on the 13th of Adar is going to decide who's disturbing them? The Jews. The Jews now have royal decree on the 13th to decide, you want to mess with us? We got royal decree that we're allowed to wipe you out. Totally. The Yidden now have so much power. Mordechai took the exact lashon. He even waited for the same horsemen who took out the first letters to come back. And he sent the second letters with them. He gave them royal honors, royal decree. The same thing Haman wanted to do, now we're able to do. Now what about that pashagan? Well, let's see. That's what Haman wrote. Where's the V'nahapachu? Look what Mordechai wrote. It's ingenious. Pashagan aksav l'nasan das b'chol medina. The second letter, everybody should know. Well, now, Haman said, Liyos asidim, be prepared. You know what Mordechai did? Stuck in one word there. Liyos hayehudim asidim. You know who has to be prepared now? I'll let the cat out of the bag, said Mordechai. The Jews have to be prepared. The Jews are the only ones on the 13th now who are able to stand up and kill anybody. You want to mess with the Jews on the 13th? You better watch out, because they have royal decree from the king, signed and sealed with the tabas of the Melech, that what? They can wipe out anybody and everybody who disturbs them, who causes them tsar. And who's deciding it? They are going to decide it. because Haman, and I think I even wrote this on the next slide, but because Haman was so, when it goes, yeah, because Haman was so worried that the Jews would run and try to complain to the officials, he wrote vague public letters. He doesn't be prepared. I'm not telling you who, be prepared. So now this is a v'nahapechu. You know what the Megillah said, we pointed out before. Ve'ish lo amad lifneihem. Nobody, not one person stood up to the Yidden. Ki nafal pachtam al kol ha'amim. Everybody was scared stiff of the Jews. Because Haman was so vague, and Mordechai took that same letter, added one word, now you know what happened? As opposed to before where people were spitting on the Jews, now everybody was deathly afraid of us. Now what ish loy amad lifnei, that means not one person stood up to the Jews on those 2 days, 13th and the 14th in Shushan. Not one person, and that was all because of Haman was so nervous what's going to be if the Jews are going to find out, they'll complain. Now, the time we have left, which is Baruch Hashem enough time, I want to go to one last part of v'nahapechu, and the unsung heroes, sort of the Megillah are the Na'arei HaMelech, the young lads of the king. These young lads, you might think they're like extras, you know, like in the mood, they're extras in the background, they don't have anything to do with anything, but Rabbi in his Sefer has a whole chapter on the Na'arei HaMelech, and the role that they play in the Megillah. It's fascinating. So let's think about this for a second. Parak Beis, what happens? When Achashverosh was depressed, they gave him an eitzah to find a new queen through a beauty pageant. Now, let's think about this for a second and ask ourselves, is this a normal thing to do? Right? We're talking about picking a queen for 127 countries, and you're listening to Na'arim, young kids, give you an eitzah, give you advice on how to choose a queen for the whole entire world? And yeah, that makes sense. A beauty pageant. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. I don't care where she comes from. I don't care what her business is. I don't care what her parents do. Nothing. She's got to look beautiful. So what's going on over here? So we got to go back and remember good old Memuchan law that we saw last week. Comes back to haunt him every part of the Megillah. What was the law? The king can judge any case, even a personal offense. Now, for a long time after he killed Vashti, he was in a rage. At the beginning of Parak Beis says, his anger died down. That means he was pretty upset for a very long time after he killed Vashti. Now, what was the direct result of that? Says Rabbi. A direct result was the king had total power to kill anybody, do whatever he wanted. He didn't need any advisor, nothing. And he was in a fit of rage over what he did to Vashti. So you know what the result was? No one wanted to go near the king. They feared for their lives. Punch, they didn't want to go into him. I'm not giving him advice. You're going to go into a king like that? Chop off your head whenever you want? You're so upset that you guys didn't stop Haman, right? You guys should have spoken up before Memuchan. What are you listening to him? You guys, it was good for you? What are you guys doing? Why don't you guys tell me something? Who are you, right? Nobody wanted to go through to the king. Who are the only people who had absolutely no choice but to go to the king were these unfortunate Na'arei HaMelech. These Na'arim, they had to go give him a drink, they had to go get his shoes, they had to go to get him dressed, give him a bath, whatever it was. They didn't have a choice. They were around a lot. So they see this Achashverosh, he's sitting there in his bed, he's got a picture of Vashti, and he's crying and looking at her. So what happened? They advised the king based on the fact that they saw, you missed beauty? That's fine. Want beauty? Go, pick a queen for beauty. And you know what the v'nahapechu here is on this one? This is ingenious. What did Memuchan say? Give the crown to someone of equal or greater status than Vashti. As he said, Umalchusa and her kingdom, Yiten HaMelech L'Usa, her friend, her equal, or Hatoiva Mimena, who's better than her. That's how you pick a queen. You don't go down in status, you go up. Pick somebody very chashuv. But what happened when these Na'arim gave the advice? You know what they said? They told Achashverosh, I need Yivakshil HaMelech Na'aris B'sula Tovis Mara. Just she has to be good looking. Have a beauty pageant, she's the best looking queen. That's how you choose. And you know what happened as a result of that? Who was able to become queen? Esther. They didn't know the first thing about Esther. What was her only quality in the eyes of Achashverosh? She was beautiful. That's what Na'arim told me. That's what I need. Because Memuchan had this whole law, which therefore no advisor wanted to go near the king, the only people there were the Na'arim. They gave him a Narish svara. They gave him a svara that only a young kid could think of. Achashverosh, for whatever reason, listened. Esther was able to get into the palace. But these Na'arim come up one more time in the Megillah. Parak Vav. When he couldn't sleep, the pasuk that we saw before, who's there? Excuse me. Haman was coming. To tell the king, to hate Mordechai on the age. Now let me ask you a simple question. If these Na'arim were friendly to Haman, you know what they should have said? Somebody should have ran outside and said, Haman, get out of here. This is not your time. We just found out, they just read the books that Mordecai did something for the king and he didn't get a reward. You don't like Mordecai? I'm telling you, stay away now. I don't know what you're coming here for, but this is not your time. Go home. But you know what the Gemara Megillah says? Amarava, Mordecai, they didn't tell the king that nothing was done to Mordecai because they loved him. These Na'arim hated Haman's guts. Because of that thing he did to them so many years earlier with this Memuchan law, they couldn't stand him. They could not stand Haman. So you know what they said? So they screamed out with joy. With joy they said, as soon as it comes up, right? They were so happy. Yeah, it's not your time. Come in. You're going to get some payback now. So we're all so happy to say, come on, come right in. Now, so what happened because of this? We all know what happened because of this. Once Haman came inside, okay, thank you. Once Haman came inside, because he didn't tell Haman to leave, he came and gave Mordecai his Olam Haba, as we saw before. He gave all these royal honors to Mordecai. That was his Olam Haba. This is a Benahapich of the highest order. This is all this coming, these Na'arim who seemingly have nothing to do with the Megillah. Right? But they're there to tell you that even the other Memuchan law from so many years ago, because Haman did it for his own personal gain, it's coming back constantly to haunt Haman time and time again. Now, why am I telling you all this? Why is it so important to know these the Vinahapechus in the Megillah? Because if you remember, a couple weeks ago, we spoke about Nisim Nistarim, and we asked the question, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu make Nisim Nistarim? Why doesn't he just do public miracles? Right? Wouldn't the story of Purim be much cooler if the ground opened up and Haman fell in, or a bolt of lightning just came out from nowhere and struck Haman down? Like, why do we need all this roundabout way and private and so hidden and turned out, and you have to work at it to find the miracles? Like, come on. And in general, why do you do Nisim Nistarim, Hashem? Just make public miracles, right? Everybody said, if God had only split the sea for me, I'd be a believer. So do it. Why does he do it this way? So if you remember, we spoke out the story that the Vilna Gaon and the Yosef Lekach point out about the father who sent his son into the field, into the forest, because his son did Navera, and he told his officer to go watch him, and time after, again and again, the father sent his officer to save the son. And the son said, wow, you know, this can't all be coincidence. Too many times, things are just happening at random, and I'm being saved by my father. And the son finally realized that it was his father in the palace. You see him, he's hiding back there. But it was his father in the palace who the entire time was watching over him. And when the son heard that, the son was so mulli simcha and so mulli ava for his father, he was so happy to go back to his father. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does Nisim Nistarim. That's why it's so important for us to know the Vinahapich of this Megillah. Because for our whole lives, remember we said the Megillah is something which is written l'dairos. We have to know the lessons. We have to know in our generation, when we see things and we can't comprehend them, and we say, how can HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a kind God, do certain things? We have to remember, we don't understand everything, but we have to know one thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, throughout the ages, has sent us His Nevi'im, His Gedolim, His Chachamim, to lead us on the way, to bring Him back to Him. And He's moving the pieces around. The Atzas Hashem is working. The Vinahapech, they never saw this. Haman, we said, at year 3, never saw that 9 years later, he would be the own reason for his own death. He never saw it coming. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu was placing the pieces. Nebuchadnezzar drowned all of his ships. He never knew that Achashverosh was going to get it for the feast, for everybody else. Never knew he was going to get it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is controlling the world. So if we don't understand everything, okay, fine. I don't have to understand everything. The world's not Google. I don't have to know everything presto like that. It's going to take time. And that is the importance, one of the main reasons that this Yantiv is such a special Yantiv. This Vinahapech was a major theme of this Yantiv. To learn up the Yesodus of the Megillah, to learn up how HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mamish turning everything around for us, and was doing everything for our benefit, even though it seemed like the darkest of times. Which then brings us to next week's year, which I think has got the most popular title anyways, which is to drink or not to drink. And Rich Shem, next week, we'll go through, basically, it's not going to be a halacha shir, so anybody who's worried that I'm not passing anything, but in Rich Shem next week, we're going to go through exactly what is Purim. Bottom line, what is this day of Purim? Why did the Arizal say, said B'Shem the Arizal, that Yom Kippurim in the Torah is, Yom Kippur in the Torah is called Yom Kippurim. And instead that he said it's a Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim. Why? Why? We have Yom Kippur and anybody sees Purim, you want to tell me that Yom Kippur and Purim have any connection between each other, right? But Rishon, hopefully next week we will talk about the Heilige Inyan of Chayiv Inish L'B'Sumei and exactly what the Yom Tov of Purim is about.